I did indeed.
So,
was it horrendously hard? Yes.
So can you talk us through the course first of all?
Well, there are 3 races on the day. So there's a 26 kilometre, a 42 kilometre and a 105 kilometre race. I chose this year to do the 42k, so that's marathon distance, with 2,600 metres of height gain. So very mountainous, very challenging. I can imagine when Cyril, the organiser, discovered the route, he must have been pretty happy, just because I consider it to be pretty much a perfect mountain marathon course. So 3 passes of 3,000 metres of altitude. First one is kind of fairly steady, just so you find your feet at the start. Second one is brutal, so long and fairly steep, 1,300 metres of height gain. And then the third pass is short and sweet, technical, quite steep, then with a downhill section of about 5 or 6 kilometres to the finish. So a really nice scenic route, and works perfectly with the 3 passes.
And it sounds like a tough course. So what was your training and what were your goals going into the race?
Well, my training had been ongoing for a while, but I decided for this one that the most important aspect of the training was to train a lot in the mountains. So actually train in the Atlas Mountains, obviously living in Marrakesh, it's only an hour and a half away. And just to do very long days, so not focusing necessarily so much on distance, but just making sure that there was lots of height gain incorporated into the weekend training sessions. I'd go out with a couple of mates, and we'd spend sort of 5-6 hours running in the mountains once a week, and then during the week mixing that up a bit with some shorter interval training sessions, hill training sessions where possible, and some other sort of steady state training runs of kind of 10-12 kilometres as well. So quite a lot of training.
And just take us through what happened on the day. How did your race go?
Well, it basically started well and finished well, and didn't go too well in the middle, which is quite often the case. I mean, I know the course really well, so I actually had a game plan that was quite rigid, which was actually probably too rigid in the end. But started off fine. The first 3 hours I always find to be a real pleasure. So, you're setting off in the dark. You get sunrise over the first pass, so really, really nice light and everything, and just when you're feeling good. And then from checkpoint 1, which is at 20 kilometres, it starts to get very, very hard, because it's a steep climb out of the checkpoint, and then you've got 1,300 metres of height gain. So that was problematic for me, as it was last year when I did it. And as it always has been in training runs in the area as well. It's a very, very tough call, that middle section. So, I made a bit of a hash of that, and had to sort of find some strategies to get through that. So I had little rest breaks, and tried to focus on climbing 100 metres vertical at a time, have a little bit of a rest, and do another 100 metres, because I got a bit sick on the climb as well, which wasn't ideal. But after I got over the top of that, you still got about 3 hours to go from there, and I finished the last 3 hours really strongly. So I was absolutely, pretty fresh actually at the end of it, relatively.
Well done. And so, what makes the course special?
Well, I think the fact that it's in Morocco is probably the most special aspect of it. So obviously a lot of people coming over from Europe. Largely a French following, but now it's becoming a lot more of an international field, and it just gives people the opportunity to experience what's really special about Morocco. So the scenery and the village life and the village culture. There's obviously lots of great scenery up at that sort of altitude. It's a very wild course, but you also cross quite a lot of traditional villages as well, where a lot hasn't really changed in centuries there. So really a really special experience and a unique experience that people don't get in Europe these days, and certainly a reflection of people in talking to them after the race was that I think the difficulty level had a great impact on them, but aside from that, and it probably made things a lot easier for them, was the beauty of the landscape and the hospitality and the friendliness of everybody in the villages as they went through.
So what about next year? As you were vomiting on the Tash Dirt Plus, what were you thinking about next year?
Well, of course, as is normally the case, during the race I vowed never to do it again. But yeah, on reflection, and probably about an hour after I finished, I realised that yeah, it's quite inevitable that I will be back again to have another crack at it next year. I always say maybe I'll try the 105 kilometres, but yeah, possibly. But I need to work up to it a bit.